Landed on the Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Trevor Aiken, joined by my two friends, my co-hosts, my partners in pod, Vincent Edwards.
What's going on?
And Philip Marinello.
Hey, everybody.
And we're back with some topic toss-ups for you guys. Is that a good way to say it? Topics?
No.
Topic toss-ups?
No.
How do you pluralize?
Okay. Is this podcast
It's
talk?
topics? Yeah, this is live, man. This is good audio.
That it is good.
This is what the listeners come here
to
for.
describe the format of the show, because this is like the Stan Lee rule. Like this episode, whatever it's going to be, this might be somebody's first episode of The Substance. So can explain. I mean, we say what we do at the beginning of the show, but we can also explain the format of the show as well.
So we're actually a comic, is what you're trying to say.
Sure.
No, this is our episode where we kind of just explore. Sometimes we do
Multiple
a Reflex
topics.
episode where it's just one topic for 45 minutes. We go deep on something, but not everything needs 45 minutes on it. Not everything we're ready to talk 45 minutes. And honestly, sometimes not every episode people are ready to listen for 45 minutes on something. So
no, I think our listeners respond really well to the topic toss-ups, because oftentimes they suggest them to us, or there's a nice variety of them. We tend to get some of the most feedback on the topic toss-ups. I mean, when we're not talking about like interviews with some dope people.
Yeah. So speaking about listener interaction, I know, Philip, you had something in mind for the listeners.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to put this out there. So as you guys know, if you've been listening for any length of time, we get books a lot from publishers. We shout out books. We do substantive stories episodes. A lot of times we even get the authors to come on themselves. So we're looking to add something of like an unofficial substance media team, where maybe we can funnel some of these books in PDFs and even maybe ship them to you guys physically and say, hey, read these books, skim these books, tell us what you think, what is worth our time, because we can only put out 4 episodes a month, and we got movies, we got books, we got Reflex, we got topic toss-ups, so we don't always have time to. We certainly can't do episodes on every book we get, but I thought it might help lighten our load a little bit and kind of be a fun way to build the team and build what we do. If any of you guys are interested in that, hit us up. DM us on Instagram or send us an email on that, and I'll be working on that over the next few months.
Love all these
ideas.
ideas.
Hit us up, email us, or DM us if that is something that interests you, and we can kind of build that from there.
Nice.
Boom. Dude, summer brings new things, man. I know people going outside, enjoying the warmer weather, some people grilling out.
Yep.
Maybe on your grill, making some hot dogs. Hamburgers. And you might know what a hamburger is, but when it comes to a hot dog, there seems to be a debate about whether or not this hot dog is actually a sandwich.
So when Trevor pitched this topic to me, I thought, this is a ridiculous topic. And then my immediate next thought is, this is probably what's going to get the most interaction for a number of shows until we have an incredible guest again.
And then your next thought was whether or not, was your position on whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich.
No, I very much had a strong position immediately. Why don't you introduce this formula?
Well, I just thought it was interesting because
what
earlier...
kicked this off for you? Like, why? Well, how did this get in your head? Because you're like, hey, Phil, we should do a topic toss-up on, is a hot dog a sandwich? And I was like, okay.
So recently, people might be familiar with Food Educator, I guess is like, I don't even know how to describe Alton Brown, but most people have heard of him on Good Eats, or if you've watched any kind of Food Network at all. And he tweeted recently, once and for all, a hot dog is sure as expletive, a sandwich. Which was interesting because this was actually a position reversal for him, because 2 years prior, he said that a hot dog is a taco. But when he took the position that a hot dog was a sandwich, he was actually confirming what food appreciators and Food Network watchers know, ICAG, that's Iron Chef Alex Guarnaschelli, represent, has been saying for a while that the hot dog is a sandwich. So, I don't know, like, I go back and forth. I need your guys' help. I need y'all, and I need the listeners' help to help me understand whether a hot dog is a sandwich
I'm sure
or not.
this is another poll that will get quite a bit of.
I need
when
to
we're
know.
like, hey, like, what do you guys think about these deep things? What do you got? Which of these books should we do next? We get a handful, maybe a couple dozen people. I bet a lot of people would be like, let me get on that hot dog poll. Vince, where are you at on this? Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I mean, I can see a reality where both can be true. Being a taco or a sandwich. One, because
Leave taco out of it. Just yes or no, is a hot dog a sandwich? Let's leave taco out of
but
this.
I'm saying I think it's both. I think it is a taco and a sandwich.
But then is a taco a sandwich?
Okay, never mind.
I think this should be a taco-free discussion.
Yeah, let's keep tacos out of it, even though it is technically Cinco de Mayo today.
It is.
Either way, if you define a sandwich as a piece of meat surrounded by 2 slices of bread, then it's a sandwich.
Is it 2 slices of bread, though?
Sure.
Or is that a bun?
Yeah, I think some people would say it's a bun.
It's a slice of bread split into 2 parts.
I would not call a bun a slice of bread.
Well, it's shaped different. But you could put PB&J in between a bun, and that would be a PB&J sandwich.
He's true. You could fold over a piece of bread on a PB&J, and it would still be a PB&J sandwich.
So, okay, you take a hot dog bun, squirt some PB&J in there.
That's a really good point.
What is that? Is that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
You could,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a weird thing to do with a hot dog bun, but you could totally do that.
Yeah.
I know, but when you look at it, you'd be like,
well, this is a hot dog bun.
yes.
You've done this weird thing with a hot dog bun.
Yeah, you've done a weird thing with it. Yeah, I feel like it's in its own category. I feel like hot dog's a hot dog. Why has it gotta be a
But
sandwich?
I think it gets to a point where you start to ask the question, how do you define what a sandwich is? What's a sandwich?
I really do think it comes down to that. Because
I feel like a sandwich is something you build vertically.
But the hot dog fits that. Like, is an open-faced sandwich a sandwich?
An open-faced sandwich?
You know what an open-faced sandwich is, right?
Yeah, sure, but like, I don't super consider. That's not exactly a sandwich. That's like meat piled on a piece of bread.
Okay.
But
but it's literally called sandwich in the title.
Sure.
But I don't know. Do you need 2 slices of bread? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying it has to have 2 slices of bread?
I think you need 2 slices of bread and to build it vertically in my mind.
So
Like,
wait,
you
what's the
build a
difference between a
sandwich.
sandwich and a burger?
A burger's a sandwich. A burger's a subset of sandwich.
So hold up. So
what about a Big Mac?
So when Big Mac's a burger though,
Big
right?
Mac's a sandwich.
But it has 3 slices of bread. You just said it was 2.
Well,
At the top and the bottom.
yeah.
Because I mean, you could have a
gotcha.
crazy sandwich with like 6 slices of bread.
Dagwood
That's still a
sandwich.
sandwich.
Yeah. But like, okay, but even in your definition of the 2 slices, like, don't they have those hot dog buns that like are kind of separated? Like everybody is annoyed by those, but like, you know how like it's separated at the bottom, so it technically is 2 pieces. And then if you turn that,
I
like,
don't know what you're talking about. What did you just say?
So it's
a
like
hot
cut all the
dog
way
bun
through?
where the 2 pieces are separated, where like this piece and this piece are separated, like they're not joined at the bottom. I get hot dog buns like that sometimes.
Oh, that like a broken hot dog bun?
I mean, yeah, but like some of them are actually, I feel like, sold that way. I don't know.
I've never seen one off. So like, if you break a hot dog bun and you stack it up, sure, I guess it could be a sandwich.
Does it like, what I'm saying, I guess, is if the bun breaks, does it magically become a sandwich, or was it a sandwich all along?
So if I had a sandwich,
Yeah.
this is visual. Sorry, podcast
Yes.
listeners.
See,
If
a
I had a
sandwich.
sandwich, I
There's your
picked it up.
sandwich. You pick it up.
I
You fold
and
it.
I turn it.
You turn
and
it
I eat
sideways.
it weirdly.
Yeah.
Like you'd be like, "What are you doing? That's not correct."
And I'd be like, you're pretty much like my child.
Yeah. So,
But turning it didn't change essentially what the thing was in your hands.
no, I think it's just kind of the whole. A hot dog doesn't vibe sandwich.
You think so?
I
What's
just put it in its own
interesting?
category.
What's interesting is
I did not know there was a hot culinary debate.
the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council agrees with you. Did you know?
Man.
How do we get? Can we get sponsored by the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council?
Shout
That'd
out.
be amazing. Shout out to the National Hot Dog and Sausage
I'd
Council.
rather be sponsored by
So
someone in the burger world.
So this is
but-
what they said. They said limiting the hot dog's significance by saying it's just a sandwich is like calling the Dalai Lama just a guy.
Cheapers. That's quite a statement.
Hot dogs are culturally significant.
No, I think hot dogs are clearly in their own lane. I feel like they're their own category.
But you can be in your own lane and still be a sandwich. Like a burger's in its own lane, but that's still a sandwich.
Okay, well then, look at it from this way.
Okay.
You get a bratwurst.
Yeah.
You eat it.
Yes.
Delicious.
Yes. Amen.
Then you get a sausage sandwich, which is chopped up, has onions, and is in it like a normal sandwich type. Is a bratwurst a sausage sandwich? That's just all in one piece and in a weird bun?
Sure.
No. See, no. That's incorrect.
Well, that's like saying, hold up though. Because like, if I take ground beef and I form it in patties and I cook it on a grill,
yes,
I get a burger, which is a sandwich.
Yes.
If I take that same ground beef and chop it all up and put like sauce on it and stuff, and then pour that mess over a sandwich, I get a Sloppy Joe sandwich, and it's still a sandwich.
Yeah, Sloppy Joe's a sandwich.
So what does it matter what form you did with the meat if the thing essentially is a sandwich?
Well, also a hot dog is one singular thing. I mean, I know you can have toppings on it. I feel like it's just so clearly like a unique creation.
Yeah,
I'm with a National Hot Dog and Sausage Council on this one. Me and the experts against Trevor.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've got Iron Chef Alex Gornicelli and Alton Brown, who are both also very much food experts. So I don't know if it's necessarily experts versus me. What do you think, Vince?
Well, I think maybe what makes hot dogs so different from a sandwich is
that's an interesting statistic.
The shape of the meat itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because
it's one big meat.
It doesn't fit in between a traditional slice of bread.
So if you go to a deli and you're like, I'd like a roast beef sandwich, chop up one big singular hunk of roast beef, and they cut a piece of bread in half and they shove it to you like, here's your roast beef sandwich.
But is a Philly cheesesteak a sandwich?
Sure.
It comes in basically that same oblong shape.
No.
Subway sub is a big
you have
oblong
bread
shape.
On the bottom, you build it up, and then you have bread on top, and you eat it like this.
I've seen both versions where the bread is like joined together.
No, I have seen some Philly cheesesteaks in that.
How about a meatball sandwich? It's pretty much in that same shape.
No,
it's pretty much in that. I mean,
meatball sandwich.
It doesn't fit your palate on top.
The meatballs, like the sauce will get everywhere, but that is meatball sandwich is in the gray zone there.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. What I'm not saying is the shape of the bun. I think that is probably subjective. I'm talking about the literal shape of the meat itself.
Yeah, no,
like the hot dog or the bratwurst is what then categorizes it as
it's a bunch of meat in a casing.
Dog.
It's not like slices of meat.
So it's like it's a sandwich if it's curated to be a sandwich, but hot dog is like separated to be a hot dog because it's in that shape of a hot dog.
Yeah. But now you're talking sets and subsets. So like, yeah, hot dog is a special subset of sandwich. So it has its own unique identity, but it still belongs to the category sandwich if that's the case. You know what I'm saying?
If it's the case. And interestingly, there was a 5-month study done by The Takeout. I don't know what that is, but the results are just over 26%. Less than 27% of folks believe that hot dogs fits in the sandwich category.
I wonder how that maybe would change over time. I wonder what our listeners would think as well. That was my last piece of evidence that I'm going to bring to the table.
You don't go out and say, "Hey, let's get some hot dog sandwiches." Like it's its own thing.
I don't say burger sandwiches either.
No, that's true. But if someone said, "Hey, let's go get a sandwich," and you got a hot dog,
would I think hot dog?
Yeah.
Would I think hot dog?
Would you?
But would I think burger either? Like usually when someone says sandwich, I think like deli sandwich.
I'm happy to put burgers in their own category, but I'm also happy to say it's a variety of a sandwich. Yeah. But a hot dog
hot dog feels like there's tension there for sure. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, and this is a weird thing, is there's a local restaurant called Fritz's, which has like funny trains and stuff that bring the food to your table.
Oh, do they?
Kids freaking love it.
I bet.
They serve a burger on a hot dog bun, where the burger patty is formed like long-wise.
The frig?
Yeah.
No,
it's
thanks.
really weird. It's a weird experience, but it actually is pretty good, and it's certainly a sandwich. And it's served on a hot dog bun.
That sounds just wrong. So we started
Great.
recording early. How much have we been talking about? Let's get the other. How much have we actually been talking? I forgot to press the timer.
Not long enough. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I mean, I think we've covered all the relevant info there. I think it's just it is a matter of the definition. I think it's really hard to define sandwich in a way that necessarily rules the hot dog out. Alton Brown tweeted this definition of a sandwich. He says, any food designed to be conveyed to the mouth by fingers, whereby the food and fingers are separated by leavened bread, which directly juxtaposes at least two sides of the filling and is consumed along with the filling.
Now, that's very flowery. It sounds like he definitely just made that up on the spot.
It does sound like a very Alton Brownie thing. I don't know if I necessarily buy that definition.
Any food designed to be conveyed to the mouth, whereby the food and the fingers are separated by leavened bread.
See, now what he did there, he ruled out tacos. Because
again, tacos
bread
are clearly their own thing.
Yeah. But because he said leavened bread there, that definitely would include hot dogs. So that's an interesting thing.
Listeners, start a conversation in the comments section. Break over real quick to Instagram and let us know what you think. Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich, or is it a hot dog, or should we just make a new category for it and let it be its own thing?
I think it's already got its own category.
And what's your favorite toppings on your hot dog sandwich?
Ooh, that's a good question. What do you guys like to do with your hot dogs?
I'm usually just ketchup and a little bit of mustard, but if I'm getting real fancy, sometimes I put chili.
Chili?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, chili's great.
Chili
what do you do,
good.
Vince?
What do I do for what?
Hot dogs.
Oh,
do you eat hot dogs?
I really don't, for real.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
If I do,
his body's a temple, Philip.
Yeah.
If I do, it'll be really plain. Just the bread and meat.
Oh, weird.
I don't really want anything else.
Really? No condiments?
No,
That's dry,
my wife will
bro.
tell you because she makes fun of me all the time.
As she should.
I would, join
I
her
don't
in that.
like ketchup or mustard.
Oh,
Like in general, I will eat fries without ketchup.
huh?
I will ask for burgers without ketchup and mustard.
Well, you definitely should have your burgers without ketchup and mustard, though.
Ketchup is super sugary, so I can get that. And mustard is kind of
It also just tastes
kind
bad.
of acquired. It does. Just wow.
I'm a pretty basic. I just
Shots
do
fired.
mustard and onions.
Yeah.
I mean, but a chili dog's also
Chili
great
dog's
too.
So good. Is a chili dog? Is it like that's great? That's like almost like a sloppy Joe category. The thing is, you can always find like some analogy that like seems to.
I think I am perfectly happy leaving hot dogs as hot dogs.
I think so too, but I think something about it being a subset of sandwich just maybe works.
I was going to say before we move on to our next topic, what was it about this that like captured the imagination of Trevor Aiken?
I just love analyzing, reasoning through questions like these, man. It's like wait, what's the difference between baking and cooking? Like that's another one where it's just like, all right, you bake this, but you cook this. Like what? Why?
Ovens,
and there's always weird.
I don't know. This is we're getting into.
I'm not. Yeah, that's a new
here.
territory. But I don't want to cause anybody to stumble with my weird distinctions either.
All right.
So if a brother in his conscience doesn't believe that the hot dog is a sandwich, I wouldn't want to violate his conscience by telling him it was.
So this is something if you guys again have been listening for any length of time, at the Substance we are not averse, not afraid to talk about things that are potentially divisive. One of the things that can get leveled when we get into,
especially around media, it seems like
controversial things. For sure. Media consumption is huge.
Yeah.
Like what kind of books you read, what kind of movies you watch, what kind of music you listen to. That's where probably this kind of churchy, Christian-y phrase kind of can come up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like what you're joshing earlier around cause your brother to stumble, but people use that in all seriousness. It's like, hey, you can't say X, Y, or Z. You can't mention X, Y, or Z. You can't discuss X, Y, or Z.
Or substances.
Yeah, you can't Usually it's been like, you can't engage in this kind of media, or you can't recommend this kind of media, or you can't say that you watch. For example, one of the first movies we ever reviewed was First Reformed, right?
Sure, that was the first one.
And there were people who told us, like, hey, you shouldn't have reviewed First Reformed because it had an R rating. And that obviously has content that could cause some of your brothers to stumble. There's things in there that you need to be cognizant of that and not do that. Right?
Well, and that was an interesting, just kind of on a sidebar on that specifically, I think that's a decent microcosm. Not that we will get into the text in a second, not like do a whole Bible study, but we'll get into what the Bible actually says. But I mean, that is pretty accurate in my 3+ decades of being in the church, especially in our wing of conservative evangelicalism. That's kind of how those conversations are often framed. Something can be associated with something that can be associated with something else, and like your tangential participation in anything, you're culpable for anything, like any way that like anybody could go astray or like actually sin against their own conscience. And it's like, whoa, on the First Reformed, the movie itself had like 1 or 2 curse words in it. It was not a profane movie. There's not a sexual, like, forget sexually explicit. I feel like there was like no sexual content period at all. It was an R-rated because it was a mature film. It was about suicide and death and suffering and global warming and like power and manipulation. Like it was a movie for grown-ups. Kind of lumping it in with like, well, it has an R rating, and movies with R ratings can potentially have content that are it's like, whoa. Like, what are we talking about? Sure. So what does the Bible say about causing a brother to stumble? One
of the first texts that came to your mind, Philip, was in Romans 14, right?
Yeah, I feel
you want to bring that one?
Yeah, Romans 14:21, I feel like is the classic. It's the actual text that people reference to, I will say a lot of times, often kind of proof text, whatever they want to say.
Yeah.
And it says, "It is good not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything that causes your brother to stumble." And in my experience, a lot of that is media consumption or alcohol consumption, or I've even heard it kind of be applied to like tattoos sort of weirdly. Like anything that's kind of socially, I don't know if taboo is quite the right word. Like if there's any sort of social controversy around it,
kind of
I feel
stigma
like
around the
stigma.
thing.
I feel like stigma is a great word. I feel like Romans 14:21, it's good not to do things that cause your brother to stumble. So, okay, I agree that it's actually good not to do things that cause people to stumble. What does that mean?
Yeah. And Vince, you're familiar with Romans 14, the broader context. What would you say is the context in which Paul is even talking about this thing? Like, what does it mean, cause your brother to stumble? There's this kind of terms of like strong and weak that come in here.
Yeah.
What's going on with all that?
So, as I understand the biblical context for Romans 14, it's talking about, Paul is specifically talking about eating of certain meats, as well as there was a section in there about observing certain days, and it's almost like an instruction to stronger Christians that weaker Christians are going to possibly have a conscience that is a little more restrictive. And so those who are stronger, it's really an encouragement not to quarrel over it, not to argue about it, not to start to create dissension and division within the body, but to be wise in your actions as it relates to that person. But ultimately, it's saying your master's Christ at the end of the day. And so we want to make sure that everything that we're doing unto him. And so the person that's deciding to abstain from something, they're doing it because they believe that that's going to best honor God. The person who feels the freedom to be able to, eat that meat or celebrate that that day, they feel that freedom and they're doing it in honor of God. And so if you're violating your conscience to do something that you don't feel like you're supposed to do or that doesn't honor God, that's when you're sinning.
Yeah.
And that's a very broad stroke of it, but that's kind of the understanding that I had of that particular passage and certain elements in there.
I wanted to circle back to, because you mentioned these terms of strong and weak, and kind of define what's going on there, because I think that's pivotal as well.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to read the whole passage and do the whole thing, because I know you wanted to bring in Corinthians as well. Romans 14:14 says, I know and am persuaded in the Lord Jesus that nothing is unclean in itself, but it is unclean for anyone who thinks it is unclean. For if your brother is grieved by what you eat, you are no longer walking in love. By what you eat, do not destroy the one for whom Christ died. So he's saying the idea of the strong things in creation that we look at, listen to, take into our bodies, the things themselves that we consume, it's not about like, oh, is that inherently wicked? Because it's not.
Right.
But if somebody is convinced that, hey, if I eat this food, if I listen to this album, if I read this book, I feel like I should not do that.
Yeah.
And if you act against your own conscience,
Right.
you are in sin.
That's right.
And I wouldn't want to say, and none of us should want to be in the position where we are egging people on to go against their own consciences. I know we say that a lot on the show. Vince is great about saying it when we talk about movies and music and engaging with various ideas, or even like stuff with the Enneagram.
Yeah.
Where we want to be careful not to say, hey, those of you who have a problem with it, suck it up and jump in, because we found value in it.
Right.
And in order to be a cool Christian or a mature Christian or somebody who's living like the fullest life, like you have to watch these movies, you have to read these books, you have to drink these drinks.
Yeah.
You have to. And then like you're bringing people along with you into those experiences that in their conscience they're not ready for.
Yeah. So to circle back then to strong and weak, just to recap what you said there, strong would be people who have a full understanding of the freedom they have in Christ, and their conscience is informed by the scriptures in that these things that the Lord has created for our enjoyment, they're good and fine to enjoy, and my conscience is free and clear in that. In this issue, nobody's going to be necessarily strong in all issues or weak in all issues.
Sure.
It is kind of a case-by-case basis. And the weak are those who are less informed by the freedom in Christ, maybe more informed by their experience, their past, their history.
Society.
And so when they think about engaging in something, they feel guilty because they feel like they can't really do that before God. They feel like that would be dishonoring to God in some way. And so even though it's a liberty issue, even though the Bible hasn't said, thus says the Lord, this is righteousness, this is evil with respect to this issue, the one person is convinced in their mind that it's evil, they ought not to do it. The one who is convinced in their mind that they are free in Christ and they're right about that. And I think that's an important standpoint too, because there's people who think they're free in Christ to do things that the Bible condemns. That's not having a strong conscience. That's having a flawed understanding of Scripture.
Yeah, lack of discernment.
But the strong and the weak are those categories. So what's interesting, once again, is 14:10 says, listen, if you're the strong brother who will, in this case, it was an eating issue. If you'll eat anything, don't despise your brother.
Sure.
Right? You have no right to look down on those who you might think are less informed than you or don't get with it or that kind of thing, and look
if you're
down
the
on
one
them.
that is walking in your
Give no
freedom,
right.
don't judge the folks who are like, I really don't feel like I can engage with that.
Yeah, don't look down on them like those people are so ignorant. They don't know.
Yeah.
They're just legalists, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Etc. And if you're the person who is the weaker conscience, in other words, you're the person who's saying, no, I don't feel like I can go there. The text says in Romans 14:10, don't judge your brother or sister. So like, don't look at that brother and sister who has freedom and be like, oh, man, what a libertine.
Yeah, like, they're really putting themselves in danger.
Yeah. And the point of the text is to say, listen, all this stuff that's liberties can come or go, but like what's more important is us and our standing before Christ and our standing together as a community and caring for one another.
I think I've had a number of conversations with folks. I think one of the potential complications of this is when you have two people discussing an issue and one of them thinks that it's just...
that it's not a liberty issue.
It's not a liberty issue, and that by other people, because we said don't despise the person that has freedom. Some people are like, well, this isn't a liberty issue. Like that person's engaging in sin, so like I want to talk to them about their sin. So it can get murky.
And I think if they're doing that, it's like, hey, let's examine the text together. We need to do this in community. We have to do this with leaders and folks who are wise in the scriptures, and really be faithful to the text and try, because there's just stuff that culturally, it's going to be challenging, right? You're going to have to apply principle.
I think that the culture aspect is huge. We as people are cultural. We talk like we are embodied people. We have cultures, we have traditions, and it can be very easy to allow programming in your society and your environment to kind of give you the parameters and like here is the box within appropriate behavior when is that what the Bible says? Is that what God says?
Right. And the Bible has timeless, eternal principles contained in a text that was written from people to people in a certain culture that isn't ours. Yeah. So we're going to have to translate. That's just the nature of being a Bible scholar, being a Christian, really.
That's it. It's super interesting because I grew up in a context that didn't often explore Christian liberty. It often kind of just made things, everything that is not Christian is borderline worldly was the term that was used a lot. And so if it's worldly, it's just wrong. Like you don't go to you don't play cards. I know that was one. You don't play any type of cards like poker or anything like that. You don't play pool regularly, like just pool. You don't go to a movie theater. For whatever reason, you could watch movies on TV at home. But anyway, it's interesting because that wasn't something that I grew up exploring a whole bunch because the nature of the conversation was just if the world engages in it, then a Christian shouldn't.
I don't think we grew up too terribly different. I mean, we were definitely a couple steps down the road, but I feel like there was a lot of tension because
we were taught not to dance in school. Remember, it was like we had to like write something or.
Yeah, I think that because our tradition was a lot more about interacting with the text, they knew they maybe couldn't say some of that stuff hard and fast, but it's basically like, we pretty much, though, we don't drink, we don't do R-rated movies, we pretty much don't listen to certain music.
And that's where we're having this discussion again, right? Because it really got translated into like, well, we know we can't say that this is sinful, but we can still tell you not to do it because we can say that you're causing your brother to stumble.
Exactly. That is nail on the head right there.
And so that's why we're kind of looking at this. And I think two more aspects I wanted to explore with it is one, the strong weak dimension itself has qualitative language to it. The strong are not to despise the weak. That is the point of the text. We are supposed to bear with the weak and love them more than whatever stuff itself. Whatever we're free to do, we don't care about that as much as we care about the individual.
These weak people are messing up my enjoyment of this liberty.
At the same time, by the very nature of Paul using strong and weak language, he is saying there is a theological truth here that aligns with the strong and not with the weak.
Yep.
There's a reason why the weak are weak and the strong are strong. These aren't just positions A and B.
Well,
one of them is actually correct. And so I think that there is a place where consciences can be shepherded in care and in love and in a way that does not trample on the conscience to healthier positions, because there are people who go through life with guilty consciences on things that can be debilitating. You know, some people could have a guilty conscience on speaking up for themselves, on asking a question, on things like that. And like, I think there is a place not to do what Romans 14 says not to do, right? Not to despise them, not to have them trample on their conscience, not to have them transgress a standard, but to, over time and with the scriptures, educate their standards with the Word of God.
And on that note, I think we've talked about this before. I went to a very conservative Christian college. I got to see firsthand a lot of the kids who came to my college were from far more conservative backgrounds than even I was from. And then you're taught, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. I feel like if you're a parent, you're anyone in any position of authority, if you are bringing people up and instructing young people through this, you're really setting them up for failure, of crisis of conscience, maybe even a crisis of faith. Like if you are telling them to honor God, you have to be in this tight little narrow box. That's all. If you are like exalting weakness as the path of holiness, because that is not true, when the rubber hits the road of real life, Like, you really can put somebody's like whole faith into question. Like, a lot of times people are like, oh, like I was told I couldn't interact with these ideas and these books and these movies and these music.
Couldn't
but
listen
like
to...
these people are saying true and good things. Or I've found, like, Brett McCracken talks about like the beauty and the transcendent nature of cinema. It's like, oh, like I was told like you can't watch movies above a G rating or whatever. And it's like, there's some great stuff out here. Man, is the faith that I was given, is that real for me?
Yeah.
Like, and you really can go down a bad path.
That's the importance of basing the things that we say on the scripture itself and not just on tradition and what what men say, what people say.
Yeah, tradition is as valuable as it correlates to what God has said about himself.
So I think there's one other text we need to bring into conversation on this, and that is 1 Corinthians 8, because this is kind of the scenario that I feel like a lot of people, they would go to this text and say, Philip, what we're talking about is this text.
Sure.
So
are you looking at like starting in maybe verse 7?
7 through 13 is, if a listener is following along at home, I would say read that whole section. But for the on air, I'm just going to give you a verse starting at verse 10. If someone weak sees you who possesses knowledge dining in an idol's temple, so like, okay, you know that you can eat food sacrificed to idols, not a big deal in their
idols
context.
Aren't real.
So you go and you eat, but then what if somebody weak sees you eating? Won't his conscience be strengthened, quote unquote, to eat food offered to idols? So then, by your knowledge, the weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed. And then Paul says, for this reason, if food causes my brother or sister to sin, I will never eat meat again, so that I might not cause one of them to sin.
Yeah.
Now, what we say there is that, does that validate the folks who said, hey,
people beating people over the head with their weakness?
Sure. Or does it validate people who would not, I mean, most of these folks would not identify as, quote, the weaker brother.
Sure.
But they would say, I have the wisdom to know my influence, to be circumspect with my life, and so I don't want to cause anyone to stumble. So there's a higher standard on me and the things that I do because I'm in a position of influence. So you as a substance, there's a higher standard on you guys and what you guys do since you're in a position of influence, so you shouldn't be talking about movies. Are they right? What does the text say?
Vince, what do you got?
Now I'm playing devil's advocate. Checkmate, suckers.
Oh.
The immediate thing that comes to my mind is, is there wisdom in how you witness to other people? Sure, especially other believers who lack that freedom. If the question is, so does that mean you stop doing that? I think you're trying to have two verses fight each other almost.
Well, I think
let me put.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, because you're the devil's advocate question. I think that context, not textual context, but like life context is important. Paul wrote this. He also said out loud about himself that he can't eat it. Mm-hmm. So like the mere knowledge of somebody being able to do a thing, Paul would have broken this in the writing of the scriptures.
Right.
If what one is saying is that if I feel like in my conscience I can't do a thing and I know that you do it, basically, in all of Christendom, the person with the weakest conscience is in charge of everybody's morality. Because that's kind of what it comes down to, right?
So what you're pointing out is when he says, if food causes my brother or sister to sin, I will never eat meat again. But we know for a fact that
we know because of the scriptures that he
became as a Gentile, etc. So we know that he did.
Yeah.
We know that he ate it in this context and the things he's talking about.
So by the logic of somebody who would say that,
something's going on. We're missing something.
Yeah. And I think that there's the difference between knowing that, because it does say if somebody sees you doing it, but I also think that that goes with like relationship. Mm-hmm. Like if I am bringing somebody along with me in my own local context, if I tweet about that I like a movie.
Influence, relationship influence.
Yeah,
sure.
I think that engaging someone else to do that with you.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like, well, person who has freedom or is stronger, you actually, from this verse, don't have that permission or freedom. And so then I would ask them, well, how they better understand the weak and the strong relationship that is in Romans 14. Because I would have to ask that question, like, because it, like I said earlier, it feels like they're pitting it against one another. And so it's just like, well, err on the side of caution and don't do anything.
Yeah. It's like you have the freedom actually, this is honestly some of the ways it's taught, I think is the tension you're feeling is like, you have the freedom actually to do this. It's not sin, but
don't.
But
Or
if you're
else.
actually wiser, if you're one of the wiser Christians, then you actually know better than to actually exercise that liberty because you know that there are people who would stumble, quote unquote, for that. That is, if this is an accurate reading of the text, which
I feel like I've heard that sermon and that lesson given around alcohol a number of times in my life.
100%.
It's not sin, but you better not.
Yeah, it's not sin, and you can, but
you're foolish
for
and you're potentially
certain-
harming someone's conscience.
And for certain people, especially people in influence, especially pastors, especially things like that, like there's a higher principle of wisdom that would basically caution you against it in your context, in this context in America.
yeah, forget what Jesus said about the Lord's Supper. Clearly, wine is bad.
Right. I mean,
Because
not
America.
not directly, but indirectly, because the brotherhood caused you to stumble, according to that. Now, that you would cause them to stumble. All right, so I'm going to help you guys out here as a devil's advocate. So, verse 7, this is very interesting. In verse 7, Paul gives background to who this person is. He says, some, by being accustomed to idols in former times, eat this food as an idol sacrifice, and their conscience, because it is weak, is defiled. And then later in verse 13, he says, if food causes my brother or sister to sin. So once again, I think this is a really helpful distinction we pointed out before. When we're talking about cause a brother to stumble, that is not equal to I disagree with you doing that.
And that's I had so many conversations with people where I'm like, we're not even talking about sin. We're saying you don't think it's wise to drink. You don't think it's wise to see a particular film, or you think this particular style of music is unbecoming. You're not even talking about sin.
Right.
You're talking about preference.
Yeah, they would see it as something that they don't think a Christian should engage in for whatever reason. And so they're taking that standard and applying it to you, which kind of is what is being said not to do in Romans 14. What 1 Corinthians 8 is talking about is someone who in their life has a temptation towards a kind of lifestyle or something that they associate with sin. They might have freedom in Christ to do it, but maybe it takes them down a bad path. And that's what's clearly being set up in verse 7. And it's saying you need to be cognizant of your influence on them, that you might lead them down into a path that is sin for them because they believe it's sin, and then they would go and do something. They would see you're doing something as an advocacy for them to do it, and then they would participate in something that they know is sin. That's what's being curtailed there. And so there is a accountability of influence.
Sure.
There is an accountability
100%.
to understand the impact that your influence can have on somebody else's life. And I think that is a caution that we take very seriously here on The Substance as well. That's why we give those warnings all the time about obey your conscience, listen to your conscience. Don't just do whatever we're talking about.
Because again, we don't know all the thousands of people who listen. Like we don't know you.
We can't do that. And the thing is, everyone's going to be talking about something that's a liberty issue unless you're just reading the Bible as a podcast. And so if we're going to engage in cultural issues, then we're going to wade into these territories. And I think that's where it's important to be in community. Once again, we talk about being a part of your local church, having somebody working through with you. But yeah, you are going to have to answer to Jesus at the end of the age for what you did. You're not answering to the substance. So do what you feel is right before the Lord. And I think that's the thing that's important. But that doesn't mean that us
you don't get
talking
to beat
about
people up with your preferences. Or your
right. That's exactly
conscience.
what Romans 14 says. And so, yeah, I think it is something where we want to be sensitive, especially about things that could lead people into sin. That's why I'm not going to have cursing on this show, and we try to warn people about content that would have a lot of language in it. Why?
Sure.
we don't know someone who's maybe working on being more obedient to the call of Ephesians 5 on, not letting obscenity be a characteristic of your speech.
Well, and 1 Corinthians 8 talks
And,
about
like,
we don't
yeah.
know all of your, again, that's why local fellowship and assembly is important. We don't know all of your lives. Like, we don't know what your background is and where you're coming from or what you've struggled with. So, like, we can't.
Yeah. So once again, I think the cause a brother to stumble issue, it is important. It is something to soberly think about the influence that you have on people. But at the end of the day, it isn't a weapon that can be used against Christians who are engaging in media, who are finding value in different things that the Lord has given us freedom on, especially if you're advocating for a hypothetical unknown person.
That's the worst of the worst, where it's like, hey, I saw you went to go see that movie, or hey, I saw you on Facebook, you went to the Royals game and you had a beer and I saw a beer in your hand. Like, you could cause someone to stumble. Who? I don't know. Someone, like the children.
Yeah.
A child. Just like, it's like, stop.
Yeah.
That's not what the Bible's talking about.
Right.
Children.
Yeah. It really isn't that at all. Now, if you had taken someone with you who was a recovering alcoholic and they were sitting with you at the game and you knew that they had a conscience level issue with alcohol and you were like, yep, here's my beer.
Yeah,
right next to you.
Never would I ever do that.
Well, you're basically saying I care more about this beer than I care about you. That's what the text is saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but that's not what you're doing if you just take a picture and you post it on Facebook. These things are different.
Yep.
And so I think that we have to really think about the text, that it is sober, honor the text, but also not try to extend the text further in an aim, honestly, to try to preserve a kind of Christian monoculture. Because we have to also be really concerned about the systems and other things that we're trying to prop up with these texts. Yeah. Those things aren't neutral.
Yeah, like to what end?
Right.
Because a lot of times I feel like it's just control.
Well, we've talked about that, right? Where ultimately if what ends up being produced is a kind of fundamentalist Christian culture that has no interaction with the world, we've actually created a system that is now actively doing harm.
Yeah.
And so that matters too. Mm-hmm. That also matters. If we create a system that has no touch points or contact or talking or interaction with things going on culturally, whether it be literature or movies or thought or any of those kind of things, if we're just cordoned off and circled the wagons in our own little
weird
basically
little
modern day monastery, then we've used these texts to create something that these texts were not intended to create.
In a very like prideful kind of Pharisaic way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I guess that's a looking at the clock here. It looks like that's going to be a two-topic toss up.
We went long on the stumble one.
We went long on the hot dog too. I was looking at the clock. I was like, "Dog, we're still freaking talking about hot dogs."
Yeah, we probably could have went longer on that one.
Yeah.
So, let's transition to substance shoutouts.
I'm really itching to hear what Vince has got for us.
In our pre-record meeting here, you said you were not talking about music. Maybe for the first time, I
curious.
feel like. What do you got for us today?
In a while, at least.
Yeah.
So I want to shout out Anthony Adams, but his name on social media is called Spice Adams. He used to be a football player for Detroit.
Detroit
Bears.
What?
Or no, Chicago Bears. Sorry.
Keep that in there. The Detroit Bears.
The Detroit Bears. I need you to understand my brain is shutting down.
I'm a sports fan.
Should send that to Ted and Barnabas over at the Happy Rant.
That's
no, but he used to play for the Bears and the 49ers.
Yes.
And then he left the league and he just started doing comedy on his Instagram.
And apparently he's on the Great American Baking Show.
A major influencer on Instagram and all kinds of social media platforms. He was on the Great American Baking Show.
Homie's got 2 million Instagram followers. I've never
one of which
he's
is
a
no
big
big
deal
deal
now. And I mean, he's hilarious. Like, he's very, very funny. And I mean, just some of his videos and reactions to certain music artists and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's just
Kevin Hart follows this guy.
Yeah, he's super funny, super, 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 super funny. So if you guys have time, definitely go on Spice Adams or Anthony Adams IG.
Dude, love it.
I'll throw him a follow.
Be checking that out later.
So you say he's got like reaction videos? Is that what you like?
Yeah, so he does a lot of actually one bit that he actually does that is super relatable and super funny is like how you act before and after you get a haircut. And it's like before he's super quiet and just really shy and kind of just reserved, and then he gets the haircut and he's just like there's even one where he's like his personality's changed and he's even gotten out of the chair with a different pair of clothes on. It's just like, a haircut transforms your life. And so yeah, that's one of the things he does. But like I said, check out his IG, just his page, because that's where he does an array of things that are just good content.
All right, check that out.
Nice. All right, Spice Adams.
Spice Adams. It'll be interesting to see kind of screenshot or picture I'm going to grab of him when it's time. Maybe I should pick that one. That's a pretty good one.
That's a good one.
Trev, what do you got?
Nailed it. Yeah, I've been prepping for some future stuff coming up on the Substance here pretty soon.
Oh yeah,
and I'm pretty excited to dive into and have been enjoying How to Fight Racism by Jamar Tisby. Loving the practical angle of the understanding what he calls the arc of racial justice, awareness, relationships, and commitment, and kind of the practical, just pastoral nature that he brings approaching that. So I would recommend that book to folks. Just generally, he writes it to a general audience. It's definitely got specific application to the church and to believers, but he wrote it broad enough so that the principles could be taken and applied for anyone, because all truth is God's truth. So I've just been enjoying that work, and I think it shows up really well. So check out How to Fight Racism by Jamar Tisby. And check out The Substance coming soon with Jamar Tisby.
I'm really excited to
that's going to be fun.
Put that episode out there.
All right, Phil, that leaves you, man.
Yeah, so let me pull this up here. On Instagram, we're obviously a podcast here.
Yep.
You guys are listening to it right now.
This is a podcast.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
I'm glad you made it this far to find that out.
I'm in a couple of different like podcast communities, and we used kind of different hashtags. There's some Facebook groups and Twitter and Instagram hashtags and stuff, and I like rubbing shoulders with some of my fellow podcasters. And if you're on Instagram, I've given her a couple of shout outs recently. Actually, so the gal whose show I'm about to talk about, she's the one, Trev, whose show I, as a listener, won Caitlin the copy of the Liturgy of Politics to begin. Yeah. Like, IVP didn't send that one to me. That one I won from Caitlin's appearance on this girl's podcast.
Italiano Fortunato over here.
Yeah, I do happen to win a lot of crap. So I just listened to today an episode of Alexis Bussetti's show called That Makes Total Sense, with Terrence Lester.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to I think I might try to grab too many books, but I would love to read his book based on his interview.
True facts.
Maybe I'll have somebody send that to me, or maybe if it comes on Christian Audio on Hoopla or Libby, I'll maybe check it out. But Terrence, it was episode 90 of That Makes Total Sense. One of the main things he talked about was how believers really sometimes miss, and I don't know if it's because of comparison, but really how a lot of times we can think of doing the good work of whatever it means to be a Christian in our local context, that we have to like discipline ourselves into like growing and developing skills that like aren't natural to us, and how a lot of times we miss opportunities by not just kind of employing like the natural giftedness that God has given us and trying to look for ways to apply our natural giftedness. to gospel and social issues. I just thought it was a really refreshing conversation. So I'd say go check out episode 90 if that makes total sense, and check out Terrence's book.
Nice. All right, man. Well, that wraps it up. Those were some good topics. I feel like that's no, well, pun intended. They give something for the listeners to chew on.
Yeah, there you go. And as we said at the top of the show, if you are interested in, if you are primarily a reader, maybe down the line we can look at music and movies as well. But particularly with all the books that I'm getting physically and digitally from publishers, we would really love to kind of build our media team and to just kind of save some time and be the best resource we can be on that. Hit us up with that. And if you want to join us with your personal support, you can do that financially at Anchor. Currently is where we are running our monthly subscriptions to. So Anchor link in the show notes. You can sign up at any monthly amount that makes sense for you. We'd ask, one of the things we're working on now, we would ask that if you consider $5 a month, if you like our show, if you listen every time when it drops, putting out about 4 shows a month. If it's worth a little over $1 a month to you, we would really appreciate your support. Or hey, we got some people supporting us a little higher. Super grateful for that. If 10 or 20 bucks is your bag and you can do that month in and month out, we'd be extremely grateful for that. So whatever makes sense for you, we would love to kind of grow our support base so that we can do more and plan more for you guys as we grow here. But if monthly support is not your thing, or you don't know if you want to swing that long term, you just want to tune in every now and then, throw us a little bit of money, you can hit us up on Cash App at $the Substance Pod. Again, I didn't get my tax return yet. I just got the paperwork and I'm excited about it. So if you got some of that good tax return money and you're like, hey, Trav and Vince and Phil, they're putting out some good stuff. I really like hearing Brett McCracken talk about movies a couple times a year. Brett's going to be like a semi-regular here. Or get KSP back talking about Frankenstein. Maybe we can get some folks. But yeah, if that is you and you are able to financially bless us and kind of enable us to do the work we're doing here, we would greatly appreciate that.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Substance Pod. There you can interact with us with our post. That's where we would love some interaction about your opinion on hot dogs being a sandwich or a hot
heck
dog.
Yeah.
No, we're going to for sure put up a poll for that.
We need that info from you.
Yeah, for sure. And
who were you persuaded by?
What are we going to do with that?
That's
Sorry,
also
Vince.
where no, you're good. That's also where our giveaways are going to be, as well as our guests. We just love to interact with our audience. We want to really make this not just our podcast, but all of our podcasts, just the Substance family. So if you want to interact with us in any way, definitely the best way to do that, one of the best ways to do that, is on our socials.
If you happen to have a dissertation-length treatise on whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich, you can go ahead and email that to thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Or if you've got testimonials or show ideas or other things, obviously you can hit a lot of that stuff up on social media, but not everybody's on social media, and that's what we've got, an email. You can just write us a letter.
Oh, we just got a voicemail this week as well.
We did. We really appreciated that, and you can
we might
do that
need to
as
chop
well.
it up. That was a decently length voicemail, but I really appreciated the feedback.
You can add your voice as well. We like it if you take 60 seconds, but hey, if you've got more to say, it's not the end of the world. Hit us up on our phone line at 913-703-3883. We appreciate you guys listening to us, supporting us, talking about it, sharing it, writing reviews, all that you do, and we will see you next time
on The Substance. Peace. with it. So there's these like crazy jacked dogs that are attacking this woman.
What?
And I just got psyched out now that we're being recorded. So the woman locks herself in the car, and the dogs are like attacking the car, and the Hulk like jumps on it and like busts one of the dogs through the windshield. And like the way it was filmed, like it makes you jump. My dad threw his popcorn in the air and screamed, and we laughed for like 15 minutes straight. He got so angry at us for laughing at him. It's one of my favorite cinematic memories.
I don't think I've seen this one.